The Florida Department of Health in Polk is the lead agency for directing and coordinating health and medical responses during emergencies and disasters within the county. The Health Department works closely with hospitals, medical providers, first responders, emergency management, law enforcement, and other community partners to ensure coordination of health and medical responses within Polk County. With hurricane season going through November, the Florida Department of Health has some services available to residents and visitors alike. The details are coming up on Polk Place. Welcome to Polk Place. I'm Bill Skelton, your host, and joining me today in the studio is Jen Brando, Preparedness Planner for the Florida Department of Health Polk. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Nicole Riley, Public Information Officer for the Florida Department of Health Polk. Welcome.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, let's start with you, Jen. As Polk residents begin to prepare for hurricane season, what are some of the most important tips that they should know?
Well, I think one of the things that we're always trying to get out is the message to create a plan, a disaster plan, a family plan. But I'm not really sure that's perceived correctly. A lot of times people think of this plan as being a big intimidation, that they have to write things down and that has to be an elaborate plan. But what we want to stress here today is that it's a plan that you just have a conversation with your family or your neighbors about things that you're going to do in times of disaster or a hurricane comes through. And that's one of the pieces that we really want to stress here, is that it just really needs to be a conversation.
Right, and I believe on your website you probably provide a checklist of things to consider and some of those things that you want to have on hand in the event of an emergency or a national disaster or natural disaster.
Excuse me, there's a lot of websites out there that promote different checklists. I know Polk County Emergency Management, they put out a shopping list that you actually start purchasing supplies back in March and through the end of May. So you purchase things a little bit at a time, so it's not a big expense for your supply kit. But what we want to stress today is that it doesn't have to be intimidation. It doesn't have to be something that is just elaborate. You know, every once in a while, buy a BOGO, see what's in your pantry, kind of have some situational awareness of what's going on so you can have some resiliency if a hurricane comes through.
Okay, so you talk about having food stored in preparation or advance of the event. Are there some other simple things to remember, or some of the key things that you'll want to keep in mind when you're preparing your family and your home for an emergency?
Yes. Well, one of the things that we want to talk about is just to have some situational awareness of your own community. So if you live in a mobile home and you're uncomfortable staying in your mobile home, maybe your neighbor has a block home. Maybe you want to talk to them and say, hey, if we have something coming in, do you mind if we come over and spend the day or 2 days or whatever in your secure home, so we don't have to go to a shelter, but yet you can still see what's going on at your own house. Knowing if your neighbor maybe is an elderly person, are they alone? Maybe you can incorporate them into your plan. There's a lot of things that you can do that doesn't have to be so drawn out and elaborate.
You know, I would certainly assume that a safe shelter would be primary, and then having the provisions to kind of see you through the event. And of course, knowing your neighbor's important, you know, them keeping an eye on you, you keeping an eye on them. So that leads me to my next question. For you, Nicole, what are some of the important ways that Polk residents can stay prepared for hurricanes this season?
Well, Jen touched on the supply kit. It's always good whenever you go out shopping to kind of keep in mind, like she said, about the BOGO prices, some of the things you want to keep on hand to have at home in the event disaster does strike at any moment. One of the things that's always great to have on hand to remember is propane. It's always something that we can use. If the electricity goes out, what's the best next way to cook your food? A grill or you know, whatever else you may need to use propane for it. That's something that's always great to kind of keep in mind and have on hand. Water is one of the most important things. It's something that we can always use that never goes bad. You know, what's to say when you go shopping you can't pick up an extra pack of water bottles just to keep on hand, or an extra gallon jug of water just to have at your house. That's always great to have for your what we call supply kit, or just to have as a stockpile at home in the event those come up unexpectedly. You know, some of the other things to have on hand is gas too. The gas could be used for generators in the event power goes out, obviously for your car. Something that's great just to remember to have there at the house. Again, you could always use it within a period of time and it be useful.
So your advice is really to think about hurricane preparedness all year long.
Correct.
So, when you're in the store, picking up something for the next meal, you might want to consider maybe that water's on sale. We should pick this up for the hurricane season rather than waiting for the last minute. So water obviously is fundamental, gas for your vehicle, your generator. You also talk about propane to cook with. How about those special needs, people in your family, or like you say, you have a neighbor who might be elderly and has a special need. Are there things that they would have to do to prepare differently, things that they would have to, let's say, purchase that might not be on your list?
Sure. What you want to keep in mind is, whatever food you gather, you want to still try and keep it to your normal diet. You don't want to stockpile a bunch of items that are out of your regular diet, but you also want to keep in mind to have items that are non-perishable. Canned food items, maybe some fruits and vegetables that don't have to be refrigerated, things that you can kind of keep on hand and have. But those canned food items are key. On the Florida Department of Health website, we do have some attachments for healthy planning, healthy food supply kit planning, and some of those list canned food items just to kind of keep your pantry stocked with good, healthy, nutritious foods. But it also addresses those who have diabetes. It gives a food list there for those individuals who may want to be cautious. They may not be able just to have your traditional canned food item with extra sugar or other nutrients in it. So there's a listing on there as well that they can look up and print off for their own home while planning their supply kit.
Jen, staying on this special needs topics, are there special needs shelters in Polk County that would provide different services for people that do have special needs?
We have a variety of different shelters here in Polk County. We have public shelters where anybody can go. Within those public shelters, there's a select few that are pet-friendly, where you can bring certain animals there, mostly your domesticated, your dogs, your cats. And then there's also a shelter called Special Needs Shelter, and we have 3 of those located throughout Polk County. And that shelter is for the special needs who have oxygen dependent, electrical dependent, live alone, mobile home, and that is something that emergency management manages, and the Department of Health helps to staff it with nursing staff. But that's a roster that they would need to contact through emergency management to get placed on that.
Well, it's great that they provide these special needs shelters because people that have these needs, like you were mentioning, obviously we have a large elderly population here in Polk County and throughout Central Florida. People that are on oxygen, people that need electricity 24/7 because they have some kind of device that's essential to their health. So it's great that those special needs shelters are provided. Now, if somebody wanted to find shelters throughout Polk County, is there a handy reference for something like that?
Actually, they have these guides here. This year's color is orange, but they have these at the front of the Publix locations at your local Publix supermarket that people can pick up. It has some information on the back as well. Jen, do you have anything to add to?
No, you just want to make sure that the color that you're picking up is orange. It changes each year, so any of the information is critical. And so 2015 is orange.
And you mentioned they were available at Publix as well?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Jen, what are some of the ways that the Florida Department of Health Polk is involved in preparing communities at large for the hurricane season?
There's one particular program that I participate in, and it's called the NEP program. It's the Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program, and that's a program that helps to develop emergency plans for a variety of different communities, whether it's a gated community or just several blocks of people who are encouraged to have some sort of community resiliency during and after times of a disaster. And so we help them to be aware of who their residents are so that they can help that one person who is special needs, and also just kind of to pull resources and help each other. It's kind of like a big neighborhood activity.
what are some of the ways that you communicate this information to these folks?
We hold different meetings, and we just really have different templates that help them to learn their community and their resources. So it's really something that they do within. We just kind of prompt them through it and develop the idea for them.
Well, it seems to me that hurricane preparedness, happens or should ideally, be in people's minds year-round, so that they can kind of continually gather things in preparedness for the events. And it's also a good idea to get together with your neighbors or organize within your community or neighborhood, and that your staff, the Florida Department of Health Polk, is there to help people prepare for hurricanes. So obviously they can call you now, but I think the essential idea is preparedness happens year-round.
Right. Well, I think one of the important things to remember is a hurricane is a notice event. I mean, that's something that we watch on the weather, and we watch it going throughout the time frame, and is it going to come, it's not going to come, but there's so many no-notice events. A tornado during a thunderstorm cell can come up where we would lose power for several hours or longer. So by having those provisions in place will also help with a no-notice, or just a regular power outage. I lost power just this past weekend for a couple hours for I have no idea what reason, but if that had been any longer, it would have been nice to have those provisions on hand. So we stress hurricane season, but there's a lot of other incidents that it would be good to have some provisions and to be able to check on your neighbors and see if everybody's okay.
That's a great point. So being prepared isn't just for hurricanes. There's other natural disasters that can happen, and like you say, has no prior notice. So people, they won't have that advance warning to prepare, which is why I guess it's essential to prepare year-round, and which is, why you guys are so important to the organization and the coordination of the response and the management of the response afterwards. But and of course, there's other disasters that aren't related to nature, train derailments, or like you said, the power goes out. Maybe there's an issue with the power plant, there's a fire, and so service is going to be disrupted. I guess the same would be true for other utilities as well. So I guess preparedness for those things kind of goes along the same lines as being prepared for natural disaster, because the idea of you losing services, you're going to want to be prepared with water on hand, food, gas, those things.
We stress hurricane season because it actually has a season, but there's so many other. Tornado season is actually early, March to April, so it just incorporates all of it.
Well, certainly given our past experience with hurricanes, it's a good idea to have folks like you, reminding folks like me that we need to be prepared and get ready for those events. So last thing, if somebody needed more information related to hurricane season or emergency preparedness, where could they go?
The Florida Department of Health website is a great resource. Right now we're updating a lot of our materials on there to be specifically for hurricane season and awareness. That website is www.mypolkhealth.org, and they can find those healthy supply lists, checklists that I was talking about for healthy supply lists for those with diabetes. We have some resources on there for your general checklist, supply list to keep your pantry stocked. A lot of great resources there listed on the website that they can go to.
So there's maybe differing checklists to include people that have special needs on that site as well?
Yes, correct.
Well, that's fantastic. Jen Brando, Nicole Riley, certainly appreciate you providing advice in advance of hurricane season and the idea of being prepared for hurricanes and other natural disasters. Thank you for being here on Polk Place today.
Thanks for having us.
In addition, staff members in this program are available to speak to employees of local businesses, civic organizations, and other agencies about the following topics: emergency and hurricane preparedness, incident command system, mass casualty, Project Public Health Readiness, Special Needs Shelters, and Medical Reserve Corps. For more information about how to be prepared this hurricane season, visit Florida Department of Health's website, www.mypolkhealth.org.